everybody, my name is Fairy or the Hedge Witch, and welcome back to my sacred space. So today we're doing something a little bit different. I think in a recent video I said I wasn't interested in doing something like this, but in honor of spooky season, I thought it would be kind of fun to share with you guys some of my paranormal stories. Right as I said that, my ears started ringing, so this is a good sign. This video is inspired by the fact that I have been seeing shit around my house lately and it's creeping me out, so what better way to deal with it than to openly talk about it and share it with the internet and hope it doesn't get worse. Just a disclaimer, if you don't believe these stories, that's fine. You can just think of them as like fun campfire tales or whatever. But to me, these are things that I have personally experienced, and I do believe that they happened to me and that they are true. Again, if you don't believe me, that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, but this is a bunch of true stories. I have 4 that I'm going to share with you guys today. None of them are particularly long or like super scary. But I am going to try to just jump into it because I have several things to talk about. So as kind of like a half story, if you guys are not aware, I have a video up on my channel about my experiences with shadow people or shadow beings. I can link it in the iCard if you're looking for some further viewing on this topic. The short version of that is I've been experiencing shadow people since I was a teenager, so almost 10 years now. I'm in my mid-20s currently, and I'm not really going to talk about any of these shadow people experiences in this video, because I've already kind of addressed them in that other video, but besides that, I didn't really have any experiences until I was an adult. So the first story takes place when I was in university. So when I was a sophomore in college, I used to go to University of Wisconsin Stout. I don't go there anymore. I only went there for 2 years and then I transferred elsewhere, but in my second year, I decided to be an RA. So as an RA, one of our duties was to make these nightly rounds around the building. Now, I was an RA in a building called North Hall. If you guys are at Stout, you're like, I know North Hall, that one, you know, it just got remodeled. How nice. Well, I was in the last group of residents and RAs right before North Hall got remodeled. The building was super old and sketch, and because I was living there in the very last year before the remodel, they weren't really fixing anything. So there was some stuff that was super jank that just never got fixed, so that definitely didn't help with the old creepy building vibe. The building didn't really have like bad energy necessarily, but I was really creeped out by the basement. This dorm building and a lot of the dorm buildings on UW Stout's campus are laid out really weirdly. I don't know when they were built, but they're really windy and like have weird hallways, and everything is made of like red brick, but it's all super old red brick. It's weird. So this basement, like I said, it was kind of a windy hallway. There were a lot of doors, a lot of like dark doorways that you had to pass. Typically like half of the lights were off. I have no idea why that was. There was like an exit sign that was dangling from like a wire, and that never got fixed because they were literally demolishing the building. So with these rounds that I mentioned, we had to do rounds, I think it was 10 p.m. and midnight, and then on weekends we had to do a 2 a.m. round as well. Basically what this entailed was getting your ass out of your dorm, carrying around your dumb little RA clipboard, and going on every single floor in the whole building just to make sure nobody is dead or passed out. In the basement we had to make sure all the doors were locked that were supposed to be locked, and general checking things out. So one night in particular, I was working one of these weekend shifts, and that day the building just had a worse vibe than usual. I don't know how else to say that. I usually would walk pretty quickly through the basement, but this day I really walked quickly. The whole time it felt like somebody was like right behind me. You know how people kind of have some weird sense that something is close to them, and I kept feeling that this whole time, but nothing was ever there. Nobody was ever around, really, because on this campus, a lot of people go home during the weekend. Menominee is a pretty small town and there's not a lot to do. And if you're living in the dorms, you're probably 18, 19, or 20, so you aren't allowed to drink legally. You can't go to the bars, so there's not really much to do, so people leave. I would usually start at the basement and then work my way up to the 4th floor, which is the top floor, and then I lived on the 2nd floor, so then I would go back down. So I started in the basement, and again, I just felt super creeped out. Really didn't like it. I basically jogged the whole thing. I was really dreading doing the 2 a.m. rounds because those ones really creeped me out anyway. Typically I would go to bed for like 2 hours and then set an alarm for 2 a.m. to get up and do my rounds. They took like 15 minutes or so, but this night I could not sleep. I was just really on edge. So the 2 a.m. rounds came and I opened my door into the hallway and it was like dead silent. It's of course any window I can see through, it's pitch black outside and I'm like, God, I am just fucking dreading doing this. I go into the basement and I swear there is somebody down there with me. There's nobody though. I'm checking all the rooms. I turn the lights on and off to make sure that nobody's dead in there. And I'm like freaking out. So I start going up to the 1st floor. I basically run through the 1st floor, nothing's wrong there. And as I'm going up to the 2nd floor, you know how in like things like parking garages, you're like going up the stairs and there's another set of stairs going up like next to you. So if you look immediately to your left, you can see more stairs going up. Yeah, so I'm going up the stairs and in the corner of my eye, I happen to see movement. I turn and there's just a full fucking lady just walking, and then she immediately disappears. Like I said, I never had any paranormal experiences up until this point. I always thought that I was pretty hard to scare, but in that moment I flipped shit and I ran back to my bedroom. Thankfully, I was walking up to the 2nd floor and I did not finish my rounds that night. I just went the fuck to bed. I locked my door and curled up under my covers. Nobody else, as far as I know, ever saw anything in that building. I think I was the only one. I did share that story with some of my friends who were RAs at that time, and nobody else ever had anything similar happen to them. But that was like the first time I ever saw anything wild. So my second story actually happened the same year. So I was still a sophomore in college, and I just was really not having a good time. At that time, I was starting to get closer with my old roommate Lexi. We weren't roommates yet, we were just friends. And they were living in a nearby town. It was about like 20 or 30 minutes away from my dorm. So on the weekends, a lot of the times if I wasn't working, I would drive out to their place and I would hang out and spend the night. The place that they stayed in, it was their mom's house, but they were in the middle of selling it. But at that time, the housing market was not as crazy as it is right now, especially in that tiny town. So it had been on the market for quite a while. Basically, Lexi was the only one in the house, so it was vacant besides them. Lexi's mom and stepdad were living in another house already. So this house was just a 1-bedroom, maybe 2-bedroom house. It was really small. It did have a basement that was unfinished. It had a lot of weird stuff in it. I had a little bit of a weird vibe in this house, and Lexi didn't really seem to be bothered by it, so I thought that it was just me being weird. But I did have an incident happen at this house. So Lexi was moving out, they were getting their own apartment, and I had went over like the very last time that I was at that house, I had something happen. So we had a night of probably like working on packing, hanging out, watching TV, movies, having dinner, and then we finally went to bed. And Lexi and I are absolutely best friends, so we share a bed when we do sleepovers. So we were all tucked in and pretty much asleep. So how the layout of this bedroom was, the bed was on one wall and then the door was on like the left wall. So if you were looking straight ahead, you could see the door out of the corner of your left eye. And Lexi has cats, so they like to leave the door open. I hate that. I can't sleep with any doors open. It freaks me out because of this. This had always been my fear since I was a kid. So experiencing it as an adult was awful. So I woke up at some time in the night and I looked over at the door just in time to see some movement in the darkness. And when I say this doorway was like pitch black, girl, it was pitch black. So, you know, I'm half awake and I'm like, oh, it's just Tama, it's just Vin, the cats, nothing to worry about, moving on. However, out of the darkness emerges one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen. It was, I don't really know how to describe this. I've tried describing it before and nothing quite captures it correctly. It was very tall, probably between 8 to 10 feet. So I saw it emerge and kind of start to come through the doorway. And when it started to come through the doorway, it put one of its hands on the top of the door frame and had to duck to come in through the door because it was too tall for the door. It was vaguely human-shaped. But the thing that I can compare it to the most would be if you saw a huge fucking skeleton that had like flesh still on it, some flesh, and it was kind of not dripping off, but like hanging off of it in places, except it wasn't bloody. It was like green and blue, like neon. So this bitch just fucking walked into the room to stand at the end of the bed for a little while. This was several years ago, so I don't really remember what happened, but it was gone. Nothing really like came of it. It just came in to creep me out. I literally could not sleep for the rest of the night. I don't know if this was a sleep paralysis episode, which I've never had before or since, or if it was just something in the house that wanted to say goodbye to me. I decided not to tell Lexi because they were still spending a few weeks in that house. I told them about it just a couple years ago. It was, I think, around when we started living together, and they got really freaked out by it and were really glad that I did not tell them while they were living there. I still think about this thing all the time. I have very bad memories, so I can't picture it as well as I used to be able to, but I think one day I'd really like to try to do a painting of it or something like that. I'm not really good at drawing or painting, but I feel like it would help kind of get that incident out of my brain. The third story for today, this takes place at a house that I lived in after I moved out of the dorms and I had transferred universities. So I used to live in a pretty nice neighborhood here in Eau Claire. It was a duplex, but it was like the biggest duplex I've ever seen. It was super well maintained. It was very expensive, but it was pretty new construction, and it was a 4-bedroom house that we were living in. So I lived there with 2 of my friends. Like I said, this was a new construction house and the neighborhood was super nice. There were like fountains, okay? This is like a bougie neighborhood. I don't know why we were living there, but we were. And I never really got any sort of bad energy or weird vibes. I did also have my altar space, so I was regularly cleansing the house. I believe this happened around October, so it makes sense that I would have heightened activity during that time because around Samhain is when the veil is a bit thinner and it's easier for spirits to interact with our plane. So my partner and I, we had just started seeing each other pretty recently. We were in my bedroom with the door closed. It was fairly late at night. He used to work night shifts and he would get off of work around midnight. So he would come over to hang out with me after that. But the point is, it was very late at night and everybody else was asleep. My 2 roommates my 2 roommates had like real adult jobs. One of them worked at a bank and one of them was a teacher. So they'd been in bed for hours, and our neighbors, they were like a young family, and we never heard anything from them. Whatever the dividing wall was in the middle of our duplex was extremely sound canceling. Their kids were old enough that they weren't really like banging on the walls or making a lot of noise. So we never heard them. And also for about half of the year, they would like vacate the house. I think they had family in another country, so they would go to visit the other family. And so we would have the entire duplex to ourselves. I'm explaining all this so that you understand that Ruben and I were the only two people that were awake and functional at the time that this happened. So we're just sitting in my bed, and my bed was facing directly to my altar. So if you look up from the bed, you're going to see my whole altar space. And at that house, I had my wreath. I still have this wreath. Okay, well, I can't tip my camera high enough to show you, but I have a wreath up there that one of my dear friends gave me as a housewarming present many years ago. And at the time I had this little, like, I don't think I have it anymore, but it was this little ceramic bird from the Target dollar section. It was just like a little shitty ceramic bird. It was painted all gray, and I had it just sitting in the wreath. And I'd had that thing for like a year. It literally had been in the same spot for a year. I never had adjusted it or wiggled it or had any issues with like when we slammed our doors, it didn't move or jiggle or anything like that. Ruben and I are sitting in bed on our phones. We're not even talking to each other. We're literally just sitting there hanging out. And I get this feeling that I need to look up right now. So I did. And as I look up, like half a second after my eyes make contact with my wreath, I see the bird get pushed off of the wreath and fall down. It wasn't like a slow, like tipping over kind of thing. It was like it was sitting and you could see it come out and down, not like this, if that makes sense. So it falls and it's ceramic, so it breaks in half. It scares the absolute shit out of Ruben, who is easily startled and also did not believe in ghosts at this time. I'd been explaining to him my shadow person thing, so he was kind of starting to believe in ghosts, and this happened. I started laughing because I thought it was funny, and Ruben wanted to leave immediately because he was terrified. So I went to go pick up the bird. It broke into two pieces. So it was the bird and like the stand part. And I could only find the bottom. Now, this thing did not go very far. It pretty much fell and hit my altar, which is what broke it, and then it fell to the ground. And it was painted a very dark gray, so it was pretty easy to spot against the light carpeting in my room. I literally could not find it anywhere. I like tore my altar apart. I like went through my whole room. I couldn't find the actual bird, so I was like, I'll just look for it later. It's not really that serious, and we went to bed. It took me 2 weeks to find the actual bird, and the place I found it still creeps me out a lot. So next to my altar, on the edge, I used to keep a gallon jug, and it was just filled with water. I used it to water all my houseplants, and I water my houseplants roughly once or twice a week, depending on how dry they get. So one day I was going to water my plants, and I went to pick up the jug, and wedged between the jug and my altar was the ceramic bird. Again, I had watered my plants multiple times between the time that the bird broke and when I found it, so I don't really know how I could have missed it. It's literally impossible because it was like on top of the jug pretty much, being supported by my altar, so I don't really know how it got there. Like I said, the night that it broke, I had torn my whole altar area apart, and I searched for it very thoroughly and I never found it. So that's something I don't have an explanation for, and it makes me uncomfortable. The last paranormal experience happened like this week, and it's what inspired me to make this video. So Ruben and I live together now. We've been here for almost 6 months. This house is extremely old. I want to say it was built in 1886. And I've never gotten any bad energy from this place. I actually really like it. It's really cozy. I feel like the house has taken kind of a liking to us. We just really settled in here. But lately, we've been having some, I guess not issues, but we've been having some experiences. So we have 3 cats that live here. Their names are Flan, Cashew, and Almond. Almond is our youngest cat, and he tends to be a bit of a shithead. So he's always like jumping on stuff and getting into things, and he knows all the rules of the house, but he chooses to break them because he is a little devil boy. We still love him, but the point is he gets into shit. So a few nights ago, Ruben and I were sitting in the living room, and we had Flan, and Cashew like on the couch with us, or like in view, either on the ottoman or on the cat tree that's right next to the couch. They were with us asleep. And typically Almond doesn't sleep that much. He likes to go around the house and do stuff. So from the living room, we have it's technically a dining room, but we call it the vibe zone. We use it as like a combination office and like relaxing area. All the cat toys are in there too. And I looked over to see a cat soaring through the fucking air. It looked like Almond had jumped from one of the, like, it's kind of like a small scratching post. It's about 2 feet tall, but it's like pretty wide. I might just have to put a picture. It's like a circle thing. So they can stand on top of it, and sometimes Almond uses it as a launching pad to get to places he's not supposed to. So I saw him launch towards my desk, and I was like, Ruben, can you please go get him? Like, Almond just jumped onto my desk. So Ruben gets up, and he walks out there, and he stops, and he looks to the way my desk was, and then he looks to the other side, and I was like, no, he went, like, that way onto my desk. And as I'm saying this to him, I see Almond come walking out of the kitchen, which is the absolute opposite direction of where I just thought I saw him. With the layout of our house, there is no way that he could have gotten from that room to the kitchen without us seeing him. There's one walkway in our house, and yeah, basically he was not even in that room when I saw a cat jump onto my desk. I don't know what that was. Whatever it is, it doesn't feel malicious or anything like that. So Ruben has become a little bit more accustomed to ghosts and shit at this time, so we both kind of laughed it off and we were like, haha, sow and mischief, whatever. But then tonight, we were laying on the couch. He was sitting up, and then I had my head in his lap, and by my feet Almond was asleep, and Cashew was asleep on the ottoman directly in front of the couch. And Flan likes to sleep in the circle that I was just talking about, that I saw the ghost cat jump off of. So he was asleep out there. We were watching like BuzzFeed Unsolved, I think, and out of nowhere, I just kind of felt, it almost felt like a cat had like kind of like hooked their claws on the couch, like caught on the fabric, or like had bumped it really lightly or something. Like I felt the slight vibration of the furniture being made contact with. I'm sorry, my words are very bad, but I hope you understand what I mean by that. And it did also make a sound. It was kind of like a shuffle, crinkle kind of noise. And I sat up because I thought Flan was coming to like lay with me, because Almond was still asleep. He had not moved an inch, and Cashew was also still asleep on the ottoman. So I sat up, and Flan was still asleep in the circle in the other room. There's nothing else that could have made this noise or like that much contact with the couch that I would have felt it like up my leg like that. I don't know what that was. I sat up for several minutes trying to figure out like if a remote fell or if my phone moved or something, but everything was where I left it. And so I laid back down, and Ruben goes, just sowing things. And I didn't realize that he had also heard this. So I was like, what? He was like, oh, that sound, didn't you hear it? And I was like, dude, I felt it. I felt it, my guy. It was in my leg. So I think we've got some sort of like cat spirit or some other type of spirit that's hanging around us this year. I don't dislike having spirits around me. As a traditional witch, I do participate in, you know, going to the other world and talking with spirits and things like that, but this is not something that I like invited here or anything like that, so it's probably just some sort of wandering spirit that happened to end up here during this time of having a thin veil. So, but yes, those are my paranormal stories. I hope that these were at least mildly interesting to you. I know I don't have like the craziest or most interesting or elaborate stories that you can find on YouTube. Sometimes true stories just aren't that crazy. Let me know down below if you've ever experienced anything similar to any of these. I would love to know if you guys have ever seen a dripping flesh skeleton that's blue and green come into your room in the night. That would definitely be interesting. It is 1:42 in the morning and I'm getting freaked out, so that's going to be all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!